The I Ching is, as you probably know, a Chinese oracle of great antiquity, and one of the things that has struck various people who've become involved with it, Leibniz, Benjamin Franklin, Carl Jung, that it seems to work. Like psychedelics, it seems to be an exception to the general rule that this woo-woo stuff never works. The I Ching works. And why it works has been, a great deal of ink has been spilled upon this subject. Jung's explanation of synchronicity, if you carefully deconstruct it, is no explanation at all. It basically says it works because it does work. I wanted to go a little deeper than that. I think that what I want to say about this evening is just to give you a metaphor. Because if someone were to attack me, and I've been attacked on many levels, the attack that I used to feel most stinging was one that sort of proceeded along these lines. So you want to make a revolution in physics based on a Chinese oracle? Is that what you're saying? You propose a redefinition of the Newtonian space-time continuum based on a 3,000-year-old occult fortune-telling method. Is that right? I understand that kind of attack. That's how I attack. That's a withering attack. And so then I had to think, why do I want to do that? That sounds awfully squirrely when put that way. So here is my defense of it now. The claim of the I Ching, it is called the Book of Changes, is that it describes change. So now let's make a metaphor here, which I think will help us understand what must be going on. And this is the only point in any of my teaching where there is any chance for what is called a visualization or a experiential thing. So make the best of it. Close your eyes, damn it, and think of dunes, sand dunes. Get a good, clear picture of some sand dunes in your head. Okay, now, the thing to notice about these dunes that you're looking at is that they look like wind. Dunes look like wind. Now, what does this mean? Well, dunes are made by wind, and somehow they reflect the thing which made them. Let's think of each grain of sand as a bit in a computer. Let's think of wind as a program which is being run on that computer. The program is run, the bits rearrange themselves furiously, and when the program stops running, what we have is a lower dimensional slice of this pressure gradient phenomenon in time, the wind. The dune is, in some sense, the signature of the wind. If you knew how to backward engineer from the dune, you could create wind. Do you see what I'm getting at here? All right, now, forget sand dunes, forget bits in computers, think of genes. You are made of genes. All life on this planet has always been made of genes. And think of time as wind. This wind has blown for 1.84 billion years. And the bits, the genes, have been rearranged into what? A lower dimensional slice of the structure of the force that created them. And what was the force that created them? Time. Time created them. And so, in their structure is the architecture of time itself. You can backward engineer out of the genetic material toward the architectonics of the physics of the temporal domain. Okay, now let's go back to Zhou, China, 3,000 years ago, a culture as obsessed with time as we are with matter, a culture that didn't build super colliding whatchamacallits, but instead perfected meditation techniques, stilling of the heart techniques, yogas that were designed to suppress physiological functioning until it fell very close to death itself. And then the inquiring minds of generation of sages observed within the core of organism flux of some sort, the coming and going of variables. That's all we have to say, the coming and going of variables. And, like good scientists everywhere, they created a special notation language. And out of this effort to note, catalog, and understand the temporal variables, soon realized to be not infinite, but in fact finite, quite finite, in the same way that all the physical universe can be built up out of 108 or 106 physical elements, the entire temporal domain can be built up out of 64 elements. And this 2 to the 6th number, 64, it's built into the I Ching, it's built into the structure of the DNA, it's built into the algorithm that I've developed for tracking time. So my answer to the person who sneered at me using the I Ching as the basis for this is the I Ching is only an artifact that indicates a database of knowledge about temporal variables that has been coded into a very ethnocentric notation system, the 64 hexagrams with their commentaries. But by mathematically tearing that apart and treating it formally, we can tease out of all that data this pattern, this fractal, and we can deal with it with our own technologies and our own epistemologies. And we can replace the zero quality of space-time with a much richer description. Now what we have is a Cartesian line, a flowing graph that depicts the ebb and flow of novelty in time, if we can correctly calibrate it to our own historical domain. So now I want to show you this wave and talk.
This guy asked this question. Did you sort of unleash this response right back to him at that moment? Did you spontaneously, or did you later in your hotel room go, shit, I should have?
No, I think I'm the guy, and then I thought up the question and I thought up the answer. It was probably something like that.
So basically, you're saying that the I Ching, one side of this is the I Ching is a artifact of a metaphor for evolution.
Precisely. Yes, I think, you see, the I Ching, it was old by the time the Han Dynasty got it. The earliest commentaries on the I Ching are early Han Dynasty, about 300 BC. It was ancient by that time. No one knew what it was.
Well, what means was it constructed?
No one knows. I mean, it was called the Book of the Zhou in the early period of Chinese history. It's not even thought to be Chinese. They don't claim it. They say it came from somewhere else. And the story of King Wen, this person who got put in jail for political rabble-rousing and then formulated it, there's no historical basis for that. I mean, that's a founding thing. It is interesting, though, that he was put in jail and then he discovered it. In other words, he had to keep still for a long time somewhere, and then he found it. I don't think that the Confucians of the Han Dynasty had any better grip on the I Ching than we do. it was up for grabs. And then it became a simple country oracle for centuries. What I did with the I Ching is remember I confessed earlier, I'm no good at languages. So I just dumped the whole Chinese thing. I said, I don't need to know Chinese. It's pre-Chinese. And I said, it's pre all these commentaries. So the only thing you can deal with, if you really want to deal with the I Ching itself, is the 64 hexagrams in the King Wen sequence. That's the traditional sequence. And that's what I dealt with and studied it for mathematical order to try and figure out whether it was simply 64 hexagrams in a traditional but jumbled order, or what were the principles of order that underlie it. Well, I won't go into that very much this evening, but for those of you who are keen for the I Ching and can take a look at it when you get home, if you look at the King Wen sequence, the very first thing you notice if you're paying attention is it isn't 64 hexagrams, it's 32 pairs of hexagrams, because in each pair, the first turned upside down gives the second. So if you look at it, number 3 is 4. Turn 3 upside down, you get 4. Turn 5 upside down, you get 6. And so on. Now, there are 8 cases where when you turn it upside down, it doesn't change. You meet the first exception in the first 2 hexagrams. The first hexagram is all solid lines. Turn that upside down, and you've still got all solid lines. In these 8 cases, then, a second rule is obviously invoked. It's that if turning a hexagram upside down causes no change, all lines change. And so as you go from hexagram 1, all solid, turning it upside down, no change, therefore all change, therefore number 2, all broken. That's the first pair. Second pair, number 3, turned upside down is 4. 5 upside down, 6. 7 upside down, 8. Then I think 9 to 10 is another one of the ones with the exception, and all lines change, and so forth and so on. And there are many other properties. And I worked on this in isolation for 20 years. Now I'll show you the output and explain the nature of the game, and I do want to leave time to go into the new stuff, because the new stuff is the new stuff.